People are still driving, so that leaves no guessing what's happening. So this meeting is currently being recorded as part of our webinar series. Welcome to everyone. I'll start sharing my screen so that we can begin with the webinar. And this webinar, for those of you who are involved in the project, is a bit of a sidestep. So thus far, we've been mainly focusing on logistics operators and on small companies operating in the logistics sector. But today marks the beginning of also a line of GLEAM research that is more focused on the consumer engagement. And we made a few promises as a project about dealing with consumer and getting consumers engaged. And to warm us up to this idea, we have a webinar focused on that today. I'm quickly, if you hear me hesitate a bit, that is because I'm checking who is actually in to see if there's a few people that we haven't met before, just very, very briefly, because there might be 2 or 3 people here for the first time. So GLEAM NSR is a project focused on the sustainable transition in logistics. We work with partners that are mentioned on this slide. And this consumer engagement webinar is part of a series of webinars, and several are already planned for the future. So do mark them in your agendas, specifically if you're interested in green procurement or psychologistics or service logistics. We already have a few dates set for you. And you can always reach us via this QR code or by emailing us or finding us through our project's website, where we often update on things that we do. So that is the shortest I can possibly be, to leave as much time as possible for the 3 speakers that we invited, all with their own take on consumer logistics. From my own university, the University of Groningen, I asked Sanne Wolf to present something about a very cool, if I may say so myself, experiment that we've been doing in an actual web shop. Then I asked Alinda Koukinou from the Breda University of Applied Sciences to take another angle on a very similar topic, and it dives into the consumer preferences when receiving a parcel. And last but not least, we asked Haris Tamatopoulos, sorry for butchering your name, should have practiced, from the University of Uppsala and the Sustainable Inno Center. So what we'll do is we'll have about 15 minutes per speaker maximum, and I apologize in advance for being rude when I sort of usher you to stick to that limit, so that we also have some time for questions. Depending on the speed of the speaker, we may have room for 1 or 2 questions after the speaker, or we postpone to the very end, which is a subtle hint to the speakers in regards to how much they were acting on time. And on that note, I should myself be mindful of the time, and I'll quickly hand over to Sanne.
Thank you, Paul. I see your subtle note. I'll share my slides. Okay, can you all see the slides?
Not yet. Yes. In presentation mode.
Now you can, right?
Good. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so Paul, thank you for the introduction. And today I'll be sharing about a field experiment we did together at an e-commerce retailer. And it's titled "The Art of Doing Nothing: How Default Shapes Sustainable Delivery Choices in a Field Experiment," which is already somewhat revealing, I see. But before I spoil the entire presentation, I first want you to imagine something. So imagine you're online shopping for a new product, let's say sunglasses, as you see on the slide. And I think many of us are familiar with these types of checkouts. You might be very aware of them, always trying to select a day when you're at home. You might also be not so aware of them. Maybe you just click the first option you see. Maybe you don't even change the pre-selected delivery option. But this is something many of us at least engage with every now and then. And this is, I think some people might recognize the checkout from which e-commerce retailer it is. But this is one of the biggest retailers in the Netherlands. And here you see, it's in Dutch, my apologies, but you see that tomorrow has been pre-selected. So you're buying these sunglasses and tomorrow has been pre-selected. So if you don't change anything, your sunglasses will be there tomorrow. But an important thing to consider is, do you actually need these sunglasses tomorrow? In the Netherlands, at least, sun is definitely not a guarantee. So very big chance that you might not actually be needing them tomorrow or anywhere in the coming week. So many orders arrive next day, but often it's not needed the next day, which is an observation we saw, especially because many web shops pre-select the fast delivery option. So they say, okay, you'll get it next day, and you'll only get it on another day if you change this delivery option. And at the same time, many consumers also choose for it. Many people prefer to have their package in the house as fast as possible, which made us wonder, can we steer consumers towards sustainable delivery in the checkout? So can we actually try to make consumers wait a bit longer? And in this presentation, waiting longer is perceived as the more sustainable option. There is a lot of research we do on this. I'll not be going into that in this presentation, but important to know is the longer delivery option is the more sustainable one in this case. So this is the question we asked ourselves. And if we look at the literature so far, what we actually see is that many survey studies and controlled experiments show us that information should be very effective to motivate consumers to choose more sustainably. So imagine yourself, there would be either a green label in the checkout or a CO2 statistic saying that this reduces CO2 by 20%, or by waiting longer, we can achieve these sustainability goals. Something like this from the literature seems very effective. But we asked ourselves, okay, but what happens if we take these insights into an e-commerce checkout? Let's test this in real world. And here we actually thought, okay, maybe it might not be information that is the most effective, because maybe the checkout is approached a bit less deliberately than we assume. Maybe people do not read all the information. Maybe people just simply choose an option that is satisfactory to them and don't engage with it as much as we might think. So the question is, which nudge might work best in a real world checkout? And that's what we tested. So I'll very quickly go over the experimental design. If anyone has questions, you can come to me later, but Paul gave a hint that we need to be somewhat quick on time. So this will not be the main focus of the presentation, but feel free to ask me afterward. So what we did at a retailer selling socks, and some related apparel, but mostly socks, we actually changed their checkout. So we did a few things. I'll show them in a bit, but important to know, there's two delivery options in this checkout. We have the standard delivery option, which is next day delivery, and we have a postponed delivery option, which is perceived as the more sustainable one in this case, and that is delivery within 3 working days, so a slower delivery option. And what we did, we actually changed, or we adjusted a few things. So we tested with the default, so that is the pre-selection of the sustainable delivery option. We tested with information, so we have 3 different conditions, so to say. That is, we just gave it a sustainability label. We gave it a label with some explanation, we are already in your street. And we tested with financial incentives. So what if we give people a discount? And these are real discounts. So people actually, if they chose the delivery option that was sustainable, they got €1 discount or 50 cents discount. So that is somewhat the setup of the experiment in really, really short. So what did we do? This ran for from April to December, and we have about 5,000 observations. And important to note is we run these experiments or these combinations of the checkout in many different moments. So we did this in summer and in winter, on weekdays and in weekends, to look at many different moments. Because as you can, for example, imagine, right before Christmas, people might be less willing to choose the sustainable delivery option than on a summer day when you don't need those socks anytime soon. So we tested this at various different moments. And I think I'm still doing good on time, right, Paul? Okay, I see nodding. So, and then we go to our results. So what did we see? What was the main results of this paper? So what we saw, sorry, my coffee machine is turning off. I hope that's not a very loud noise for all of you. So what we saw is that the default had by far the largest effect. And the default is, if you see it on this slide, it's simply swapping around the sustainable delivery option to the one that is pre-selected. So in that case, the sustainable delivery option was automatically pre-selected. And we saw that this small change, so swapping around the option and changing which one is pre-selected, had a really large effect, to about 75 to 80% people actually sticking to this default. Discounts were also effective, but much, much less than the default. So pre-selecting the sustainable delivery option had a very large effect. And we saw that this discount led to an increase in people choosing the sustainable delivery option of about 30%. So about 30% of people then chose to stick with or choose the sustainable delivery option. For information, this effect is much, much smaller. And in many cases, we see that there's hardly a difference between no information and a little bit of information. But the more extended information, so telling people we're already in your street, does do something. So we see about 10% then choosing the sustainable delivery option. But important to note, this in no way compares to this ginormous effect of the pre-selected option. So information leads to a behavioral shift. So people choosing sustainable of like 10%, where the default leads to about 80%. So this is and to us, this was also to some extent a bit of a surprising finding. Like we know from other studies that default must be effective, but that it has this big effect is also not something we expected. Well, and then we thought, okay, can we make this even more effective? Can we maybe reach the 100%? See if 100% of people are willing to choose sustainable delivery. Of course, that might be wishful thinking, but we tested what if we combine different treatments? So what if we say, okay, it's pre-selected, people get a discount, and we give them information. So we do everything at the same time. Results show that's not so effective. So once we have this default option already on, so to say, so once the sustainable delivery option is the default, we see that the additional gain that we can get from adding more information or discount is very, very limited. So only when the sustainable option is not pre-selected, then discounts and information help. But when it's already pre-selected, we see that the effects are minimal. There's some combinations, so a default with €1 that can slightly increase it, but it turns out to be quite a low effect or small effect. Well, final result slides. So this makes us wonder, of course, right? Why is this default effective? Is the default effective because people simply don't mind so much? Is it just okay to have the sustainable delivery option? Do people pay attention to these delivery options, or do they just continue through the checkout and never notice what was pre-selected? But we do see that in some specific moments, people actually do change their preferences or change their choice, at least. So we see that around Christmas, Sinterklaas, and Mother's Day, the switch away from the default option is much, much larger. So all of a sudden on Mother's Day, we see that there's this ginormous drop in the amount of people choosing the sustainable delivery option, even though it's on default. My apologies. And this suggests that people indeed do pay at least some attention to the delivery options, but only swap the moment it's actually important to them, or the moment the alternative option is really much more attractive. So we also see when the sustainable option is not on default, then we see that €1 can actually lead to 40% of people switching to this other option, even though it's not on default. So people do seem to be paying attention, but only switch once the alternative is salient and attractive enough. To the concluding slide, I think I'm doing good on time. So what do we learn from this research? So we see that pre-selecting the sustainable option is by far the most effective, and discounts do work much better than information, but also less strongly than the default. Combining intervention creates no complementary effect. So once we reach this default effect, so 80% of people, then we stagnate. So we don't have much bigger gains afterwards. And we see that people switch away from the default. So it's not that people stick with it nonetheless, but only when it's attractive enough to switch away. And then a little hint on future research. So we also want to be testing on other product categories. Of course, we realize this is socks, might not be the most urgent product ever. And we want to examine how consciously people make sustainable choices in the checkout. So how can we really optimize this influencing them? Can we think of better ways to do it? Do people engage with this delivery choice? What do they really find important? So these types of things are things we want to investigate in the future. That's it. I hope I did well on time.
Perfect. Sorry for priming this way too much and making you.
No. It was good.
You've done perfectly, which also means that we have room for one or two questions if people have, or if not, we can move on to Linda. There were a few questions in the chat. That's highly encouraged. And Jos, to get to your point, we've seen these kinds of questions, like the one of Simon as well, right? So what does this actually do with people's perception of the service that's being delivered, right? Do we see more complaints? Well, in this study, not, but when we present it to retailers and their service providers, they definitely ask and they worry about this, which makes sense. And indeed, in this specific experiment, we just asked consumers whether they would be willing to go for an option that says within the next 3 days. Fortunately, these are socks. So if you don't order too many of them, they will arrive through your mailbox, and you don't need to be at home necessarily, which we are not sure whether people actually knew. So that's a limitation of what we've been doing here. But in other experiments that we have lined up, we are actually working with a nominated day, which gets around the point that you're making, Jos, in regards to what consumers actually want, right? So they would want reliability and not they want to know when their goods are actually arriving. And if there is a smart integration between the carrier, the retailer, and the consumer, we can use also nominated days to smooth out demand and get to a more sustainable solution. But that may be a presentation for another day. Slightly concerning thing is that when I was going for a bridge towards Alinda, I saw her disappear, but fortunately you're back. This was a roller coaster in my mind. Anyway, if I saw Harry, you raised your hand, but you retracted that hand, or do you want to quickly to ask a question?
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul. It was a very interesting presentation, and since we did something similar, not the same, is one of the pilot cases that we did. The result that you got is based on how many samples, how many users?
About 5,000.
5,000. Wow, nice,
Yeah.
nice. Thanks a lot, Sanne.
No problem.
Karin?
Yeah. Did you have contact with Bob.com, or is it just the retailer for the socks?
Yeah, so we did the experiment at a retailer that sells socks. So this is not Bol.com.
Okay.
I mean, I've had contact with Bol.com, but of course, it's a very large company. So this preliminary experiment was done at this socks company. We hope that we can, in the future, do it with a larger company selling more different products, because, of course, that also has a big influence on our results.
Yeah.
But for now, it's done at a retailer selling nice socks.
Okay. Very, very good. And have you tried to contact the branch organization already, or for online, selling and marketing?
So this Wednesday, I'll have a meeting, and these contacts might be made. So I haven't yet, but I hope to do that indeed, because it could be a lot of fun to work together with them on this, and also in that way get in contact with other retailers. So that is a hope.
Very nice, Sanne. Good.
Good.
Thank you.
So I suggest, Sanne, you stop sharing the screen, and then Linda can take it over.
Yeah, that's always an interesting moment if it's going to work. It worked in the practice. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, it works now too.
Okay, excellent. This was the most stressful part. Hi, my name is Alinda Coquino. I'm a researcher at Breda University of Applied Sciences. And together with my colleague Hans Kwak, he's a professor of smart cities and logistics. We do a lot of research on sustainable last mile logistics, and particularly how you can engage the consumer in that process. Sanne mentioned a lot of controlled experiments. Until now, that's what we were doing most of the time. But unlike her, we always did it in a lab setting. So it misses a little bit the real life feeling. So that's why I was always very excited to hear about Sanne's experiments. But the research I'm going to present today is slightly different. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept crime of opportunity. We translated it to the research context as research of opportunity. And most of what we've done so far is always nudging experiments. But the trouble with experiments is that you can only find what you're looking for. And last year, this website, Dutch news website called nu.nl, published a series of articles about parcel lockers. And it was really, really great as a researcher. My heart was pounding because many, many people reacted to those articles. And for those of you that are not familiar with nu.nl, it's a closed community. You can only comment if you're a member of the community, and it's a very engaged community. So over 3 articles during 2025, we collected 3,000 comments and we analyzed them using what we call thematic analysis. We were trying to find patterns for why do people choose to use parcel lockers or not. And what we were trying to do is figure out, is there something there that we weren't aware of that we might want to use for future research? And we focused on a concept called perceived utility, which is what is the benefit that I'm going to get from using a parcel locker? And perceived utility is very subjective. It depends on each person. So it's not a universal truth. It's just 2 people could have different utilities from the same option. And this is always the cliffhanger, but I'm not going to do it. I always ask everyone, what do you think is the most important reason, based on online comments, why people would choose to use parcel lockers? But I can't see the comments, so I'm going to give it straight away. It's actually frustration, which never showed up in any of our experiments because we were never looking for it. And it turns out that if you ask people to express their feelings about parcel lockers, in a very biased way, of course, it turns out that frustration was the most important theme. People are very frustrated by delivery people not showing up, dumping the parcels. A neighbor of mine was complaining that her 16 bottles of wine were left in front of the door during a rainstorm. So there's a lot of frustration for why with regular delivery methods. So that's why people were selecting parcel lockers. I'll come back to that a bit later. The second reason was the one that you actually expect people to choose. Why do they choose for parcel lockers? Well, because they're convenient. And convenience is determined by 3 things: the distance, but also where is the parcel locker located? Is it within a store? Because if it's within a store, then its availability is limited by the hours of operation. But if the parcel locker is located outside, it's more available, but then you notice that people start having fears about the safety of using such a parcel locker. So for example, a good friend of mine, she says, I'll never use the parcel locker in our neighborhood because it's in a dark alley and I don't dare walk there in the evening, and I work 9 to 5. So in the winter, I have to walk in the dark. And people are also very concerned, what if I open the parcel locker and there's nothing in there? And PostNL or DHL says, hey, you opened the parcel locker, so you picked up your parcel, but what if it's not there? So people have a lot of different responses to the parcel locker. And of course, there's also the more generic technical problems of the parcel locker says there is a parcel, but there isn't. Oh, it doesn't open. So there's a lot of nervous anticipation. And the one that Sanna also mentioned is, but they're also actually expecting financial nudges. So what we found from the comments is that people are very, very open to financial nudges. They want to, they expect to be rewarded for their efforts that they're putting in. And all of this together depends completely on characteristics of their recipients. In other words, if recipients, depending on their personal circumstances, and I'll come back to that in a second again, they have different utility from the parcel lockers. So all of that together goes to show you that people experience parcel lockers in this case differently. So if you want to nudge them, you have to take into account people's specific circumstances. And the other thing is, this is obviously based on a very biased sample. Who are the people commenting on articles? It's the people that have strong opinions, the keyboard warriors. So what we did is we decided, okay, now we have all these new insights about how people behaved in last mile logistics in relation to parcel lockers. Let's use them to launch a survey where we test for all of those. So we launched a survey. We're halfway through it right now. So this is based on about 400 responses. And we asked people to record their last online order and ask them to rate the delivery. And then we also collect some additional information. So if you look at it from this side, suddenly everyone's really happy with delivery. The vast majority is either very satisfied, this is from a scale from 1 dissatisfied to 5 satisfied, very satisfied. Most people are very satisfied with the delivery. But if you split it depending on how they receive their package, and this is what they were expecting to receive, then you see something very different. What you see is all the way on the left, the green is people that were expecting to receive their parcels at home, actually receiving it at home, versus the red, it came home, but it wasn't supposed to show up. So it was, for instance, supposed to show up at a parcel locker, and it came home anyway. So you can see the mismatch is a killer. With the shop, it's a little bit the same thing. If you expected to pick it up at a shop and you received it there, you're quite happy. But if it goes to a shop, whereas this wasn't the initial plan, then you're quite dissatisfied. And the last thing is, you notice that with parcel lockers, of course, there's a decrease in satisfaction. It wasn't supposed to be delivered at the parcel locker, but it's delivered anyway. But this decline is much smaller than the others. The next thing we did, don't worry, we won't go into the numbers, is we asked people to rate each delivery method, home delivery, shop delivery, and parcel lockers, on how risky do you think it is? Do you have the means to do it? That's the facilitating conditions. Social influence, did someone tell you you should do it? Performance, is it going to work well? And ease of use, how easy is it to use this alternative? And based on that, we did a latent profile means analysis, and we identified 5 types of consumers. And I'm just going to go through them very briefly. This is Jorik. He will not get anything at home. He lives alone. In this case, he also doesn't have a partner, but he lives alone in an apartment in a densely populated area. He works full time, and he has a parcel locker close by. So he's not going to wait until the parcel comes home because he's never there. He prefers to pick it up from the parcel locker. He also has the means to do that. So he's already an alternative champion. He's very easy to nudge. He'll probably be very peeved if you don't try to nudge him. Then we've got 2 groups that are probably not very interesting from a nudging perspective. The committed home loyalists. These are people that could go to pick up their parcels somewhere else, but they don't believe in them. It just picking up at a shop or parcel locker is not going to work well with them. They don't find it easy to do. Typically, because parcel lockers are located quite far, they live in a less densely populated area. So for them, it's just not practical. So this is a very interesting group to look at it from also a logistics service provider, because access for them is quite hard. So they're not yet ready to be nudged. You're making their life a lot more miserable that way. The hindered home devotee, or these are people that strongly prefer delivery at home, usually because they're not able to go pick up a parcel locker from a parcel locker from a shop. So these are the people that typically order for delivery at home because that's how they can receive a package. If they can't go to a store to pick up things, then they're also not going to want to go to a parcel locker, right? This is also due to low car ownership. Very often, they just don't have the means. Most interesting group from a nudging perspective is the pragmatic home devotee. They prefer to receive packages at home, but that's mostly because it's way handier. But if you want to nudge them, it's 40% of our group so far. They're easy to nudge. They're really easy to convince to go somewhere else and pick up their parcels. Parcel lockers are close by. They live in densely populated areas. And the last group, the true multimodals, you can do anything. They're very receptive to nudges. Their parcel lockers are very close by. They live in very densely populated areas. They also have the strongest attitude towards the environment, the most positive attitude towards the environment. So they're actually really easy to nudge. So this is just a way to look at it from, okay, nudges work, but they only work for specific groups. And if we wanted to develop good delivery methods, we have to take into account different groups and their needs. So the conclusion is actually what you want to do is give control to the recipient, because recipients actually know best which delivery method works for them. This is, for example, my house. I work full-time, I'm never home, but we have a brilliant invention. It's called the bakfiets in Dutch. We never use it for our kids anymore, but it's the best place to get packages delivered. So if you give the consumer the control, then you increase the chance that they're going to receive things the way they want, because the biggest killer is not so much where they get it, but when there's a mismatch between what they expect and what they the way they actually receive their packages. I'm assuming I stayed within time because I didn't hear Paul interrupting me. So
very much on time. Perfect.
okay.
And again, I might have overdone it at the front end because now I'm like I'm the main villain in this story.
No.
That's on me. Thanks so much, Alinda, for a super interesting presentation in terms of content, and also a joy to just the way you presented it to us, and it's really nice. I had to laugh about a few of the gifs actually, but you couldn't see us, I guess. Bart, you have a question.
Thank you so much, Linda. I really love the talk, and also appreciate that you have a strong focus on the perception of the customers, of the users of this service. So I have two questions. One is that, at least in my perception, parcel lockers are just starting to become more normal, and normal in the sense that there are more parcel lockers spread around the country, and also people slowly maybe get used to it. So is there any time dimension in this, or do you know of other studies that show more acceptance over time? And the second is talking about context. I appreciate that you make a differentiation between the type of areas that people live in. I'm an urban planner by background, and I wonder whether also not so much the location of the parcel locker, but the combination of the parcel locker with other facilities. So not only being in shop or not, but being near a playground, being near a place where you can get coffee, in the community center, could also play an influence or a role. And I'm asking that because I feel it's actually an opportunity to create some areas in the neighborhood where people more randomly meet each other.
Actually, you hit the nail on the head on both things. So one of the things that we did, your first question or comment was about acceptance over time. And there's two dimensions. There's time and there's context. So what we've done is we've repeated the same study every year. And every year we measured familiarity with parcel lockers and intention to use them within like a zero experiment. And Absolutely true. Every year, familiarity with parcel locker increases and intention to use it even without nudges. So I can't prove causality because every time it's a cross-sectional experiment, but you and I can both agree that if one goes up and the other one goes up, it's very likely that familiarity increases intention to use. That's one. The second one is we actually did a cross-cultural study a couple of years ago with Lithuania that has a much stronger culture of parcel lockers. For them, it's actually the default that they expect is delivery to a parcel locker, and there must be something very weird going on if you want to receive it at home. So habituation is definitely key. And what you notice is that if you nudge people to use it for the first time and it goes well, they're more likely to use it again because it becomes more of a habit. So that also brings directly to your second point. Can you design the whole process in a way that fits better with people's habits? And that's actually what we're working on right now. Future research, but already ongoing, is how can you integrate more sustainable delivery options in something that's already there for people? Because you don't want people to make extra trips, especially not by car, but especially in those less urban locations where parcel lockers or pickup points are quite far from home, it's actually sometimes even less sustainable if everyone picks up their car and drives 5 kilometers to pick up a parcel. So how can you make it part of their normal or routine trips already? So yeah, playgrounds, for example, supermarket is the obvious one. So now we're working with parcel locker designers to figure out, okay, when does it actually integrate well with people's already existing habits?
Thank you so much for this exchange. Harry, if you start sharing your screen, we're making a segue. And as you do, I did have a question that sort of looms already from these two presentations. And that is like, this in the end needs to let consumers and retailers and carriers perhaps talk to each other, right? To make this nudging the most effective. And maybe we can linger on what that would actually entail as we first listen to Harry and then maybe have some time for a more generic questions answer session at the very end. Harry, it's yours.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul. Nice presentations indeed. My perspective will be a little bit more general. I will potentially give a more bird's view of a project that we have. It's a duty project that we have applied and gotten. It's by the end of the project we got a new one in urban logistics. So we are pretty active in the field of transport and mobility and micromobility. So this project is Sukolo. It's called Sukolo. Greetings from Sweden at the same time, and I just want to give you a very small introduction about the organization because I do not represent a university. I work at Uppsala University right now, but I'm wearing the hat of Sustainability Center. I'm the director of this organization, and this organization is basically the partner of the project. So we are located here in Uppsala. We work very much with innovation. We are one of the good innovation hubs in the Northern Europe. We have good collaborations at Uppsala University, Groningen University, I've heard, through a light program, I've heard, Paul. So, but we are quite proud about of innovation ecosystem here in Uppsala. And it's a 15-minute city. This is just basically our pitch. Everything is really accessible in Uppsala within 15 minutes. If I want to go to my job, I can go within 15 minutes. If I want to have a meeting, I can go within 15 minutes. So we're quite bicycle city, and I'm saying that knowing that I'm talking to Dutch people here that are on the forefront. But the innovation ecosystem in Uppsala is pretty strong, and we are part of the whole innovation ecosystem. You can see how the innovation ecosystem looks like, and Sustainability Center actually creates ideas even on that stage when people do not even know that they have ideas. And they have a whole innovation ecosystem that supports the ideas, supports innovation, supports research, and they go further. And we're doing pretty good. So this is basically the whole innovation ecosystem. We represent the innovation ecosystem in Uppsala, but we work in 3 pillars. Actually, this is basically what we do. We try to identify elephants. We work very much with collective intelligence. We try to identify problems with different perspectives. This is a team. We have some researchers as well and some students. We do a lot of hackathons. We have been doing a lot of open innovation activities from few hundred people to few people to thousands of people. Now we have applied for a Horizon project, and we want really to make a hackathon on the boat between Sweden and Finland. So we do the hackathon on the boat, and when you come back, you actually produce you create the minimum viable product when you come back to Sweden. And we have actually 3 Horizon projects in logistics and mobility. Diamond, Promise right now with the DUT, and Sukolo that I present today. But we work a lot with startups as well. Work a lot with startups. We have a pillar that is working with innovation ecosystem, so startups, acceleration programs, and so on. But also a pillar that is working with research and innovation. And this basically project, Sukolo, that I present, is basically located under this pillar, innovation and research. And we do a lot of education impact. We have a lot of projects in Erasmus, for example. And then one of the main challenges that we have at the organization is how you capitalize the energy and the knowledge that you obtain from these projects, how you transform, and how you, it's one of the main problems or challenges that all the projects have. What do you do with the knowledge that you obtained through a project? How you can make a next step, and how you can sustain this knowledge that you have withdrawn, constellations, different groups, and so on. And now we actually have built a pool of people, of experts that work very much with open innovation, that work with, very much with transformation advisory to startups, to different research projects, and so on. So this is the project basically that we have gotten, which is called Sukolo. When we wrote this proposal some time ago, it sounded, I was going to Japan to present the project in Japan, and it sounded as a Japanese name. So it's Forced Sustainable Options for Personal Mobility and Logistics in Urban Outskirts. And you see the mission here to provide a solid conceptual, methodological, and empirical understanding for new knowledge about consumer behavior and bicycle logistics. And this is the challenge. The challenge is that there are many different unsustainable delivering options that lead consumers to choose fast and car-based deliveries. But you have many different challenges that are below the surface of the sea. You have the lack of infrastructure that makes peri-urban areas, because this project is focusing very much on micromobility in peri-urban areas. So one of the challenges that peri-urban areas lack accessible logistics infrastructure. Then there's a limited mobility. Peri-urban areas lack accessible personal mobility. Then you have absence of alternatives. Areas lack sustainable delivery alternatives. And then you have many different behavioral barriers. So lack of awareness, convenience, and so on. I will go quite fast because I think I have a lot of slides, and then I added some more slides while I was inspired by the previous presentation. So few of my slides will go very fast, and I will just jump to those that can potentially be material for discussion between all of us. So these are basically the key questions. If I talk too much or too fast, please let me know. But I will go to these first slides quite soon, quite fast. So we have this demand and supply side, how you best align the needs, shops, logistics providers, mobility operators, and public authorities. And then you have the supply side on the other hand, how to enable and motivate sustainable delivery choices in everyday consumer behavior. And for us, I do not present one pilot, but we have 3 pilots in the project. This is basically the goal that you have. The 3 pilots are in Merano, in Italy. Fantastic city, Leipzig in Germany, and then Salzburg in Austria. And we have accepted that every case has a different potential. They have a different lab, and we investigated this diversity. And we concluded the result in the end that the solution should not be a solution that can be applied to every lab. Every lab can have a different solution and can be accepted. So for example, in Leipzig, we worked a little bit with digital nudges, as the previous speakers talked. This was in Salzburg. Then we have cargo bike logistics, local pickup stations, parcel lockers as well, and many micro hubs. This is the pilot in Leipzig. Yeah, it's a lot of information here that I do not really need to go through, but the whole idea was a mobile micro hub with cargo bikes. So we developed a cargo bike sharing station in a neighborhood in Leipzig, outside Leipzig, that is quite a neighborhood that live more elderly people there. So we tried to test a little bit this target group. We developed a digital simulation tool to determine these optimal micro-hub solutions, and a software routing prototype to help bicycle couriers to schedule deliveries in an optimal way. This was basically the pilot that we did in Germany. And then the pilot that we did in Italy was more inclusive, was more collaborative, was more community-based. And the idea was free cargo bike sharing systems, home deliveries by bike. And this basically pilot was built on a different pilot that started from an Interreg project. So basically we did not start from scratch. We started from an already existing foundation, and for us was a really good case because we really knew a few things in advance. So we had these innovative 3D tours describing accessibility and inclusion of pilot sites, and then geo-referenced mapping of points of interest. So it was a lot of points of interest that was actually developed through a digital platform. And then we had the Salzburg pilot, and this was basically a web shop. And while the previous speakers were talking, I added a few slides because I thought that was interesting to think a little bit together the digital nudges. I think Sana mentioned about the nudge that was most effective. We tested different nudges, and we have a quite big database of a previous nudges, a big database of a previous project. When we tried to we identified and developed a repository taking nudges from different areas. For example, we took nudges from the COVID-19 pandemic, how you can nudge people, motivate people to do the vaccination, for example. Or, for example, we got nudges from health applications, how you motivate people to go to their work by bike. So we built a huge repository system that we actually used 6 of these nudges in this our web shop. And this is basically the results. And this is a slide that I put now. And for us, it was not the default. It was the default for you, Sana. Is that right? Or?
Yes, it was the default.
Yeah, that was interesting. And our sample was around 1,150 users. And for us, it was more the customer loyalty nudge. And then we used different Greenleaf, we used different nudges, and then the urgency nudge that buy now, otherwise you will not manage with the price and so on, did not really work. So for us, the most effective nudge was the loyalty nudge, which was interesting. And I put this slide because I thought it would be interesting to discuss and compare afterwards. This is the methodology that we used, but I will not go through into that because we don't have so much time, but this is the combi model that we have been using. This is the research idea behind that, how you actually create a behavior on capability, opportunity, motivation, and and then this is basically activities that we did in order to engage the community before the piloting, during the piloting, and also after the piloting. Many different workshops, different campaigns, surveys. I will not really go into details, but we did a lot of activities in order to engage and make people be committed. And then after the pilot, we have actually been doing a lot of communication, dissemination activities involving different European experts. We had a very nice event which was called European Learning Circles. We discussed solutions. And then we had also on board in our project cities that were not actually partners, but have shown interest to adopt the ideas that we developed in their cities. And we have 2 Swedish cities. We have Gävle city here in Sweden and Malmö. But also in this European learning circle, we had many different cities from different parts of Europe. And I actually write a report now on how these cities can actually develop the pilots in their own. Best practice, and I will not really go into that because I see that the time is quite limited, is in Merano, because it was, I think, the most, and as it came up, the most effective pilot, because it was really much in this community engagement process. And basically one of the main regions would be that potentially this project, a similar project, has started with another one. So this DUT was a continuation of the previous existing project. So it was an already established community. And we actually tested new things in the already established community, and we felt that the effect was stronger. So there was onboarding of local shops. We did many activities. I can share the presentation afterwards so you can have it, so you do not really need to go through into that, but there are many different activities. But it was a lot of personalized communication, different focus groups, and these are basically the key learnings for the public authorities. And these are the learnings that we got. This co-create with local ecosystems. So it's really important to involve early the different stakeholders in every pilot. Use living labs to de-risk innovation. In innovation, we call it MVP, minimum viable product, and living labs could potentially be like an MVP in research projects. So you do not really risk to make a new development without testing. So invest in trust and long-term relationships, and that is obvious, especially in countries that things go slowly. In Sweden, for example, these things take time. In Horizon projects, we have much easier process to take a letter of intent from the mayor of Barcelona or Madrid or even Istanbul, which is how many million city, than the city of Uppsala, for example, that is 300,000 people, because the process is really long. So you really need to establish relationships. Adapt solutions to local conditions, combine hard and soft measures. So it's not nudging that is only the solution, but you have to combine infrastructure measures as well. Plan for scalability from the start. This is basically the team that we have. I represent Sustainability in our center, but we have a nice team working behind the project. And if you want to hear more about the project, we have a webinar on 11th of June, where the pilots will present more in detail how we have worked. And I can send the link on the chat, Zoom chat, and looking forward to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
How did it go with the time? 5 minutes left. And sorry for that.
So we have room for maybe 1 or 2 questions. I do not want to run over time and give people a chance to quickly fill their coffee as they run to their next web meeting or physical meeting, God forbid. But if there is a question, this is a good moment.
By the way, I put the link of the webinar on the chat, so everybody can have it. You are very welcome to come. And I can also put my contact details as well.
Jos, you have the final word.
Final? Okay, that's a terrible...
final word, the final question.
Okay. Well, I was wondering, all very interesting presentations, so my compliments to the speakers and also the ones organizing. But it raised my point. You already indicated at the introduction, Paul, that this is a bit a sidestep from the GLEAM project, where we're more focusing on the companies. But since we're engaging consumers, I was thinking about this term consumer. So if we look at the long-term perspective of progressive cities, we want to move to circular economies for our cities, then actually consumers become reconsumers. And the volume of consumption also becomes a variable of interest, which perhaps you want to influence. So it's just more a remark rather than a question to the speakers, but I think it's relevant for them, of course, because if we only look at the process of efficient delivery, and I myself am very conscious that I'm contributing to that process, then perhaps we're leaving out a factor that may become increasingly important.
Indeed. I cannot say anything else than indeed. So, and I'm also happy that usually when I give speakers a bit more time than this, they usually do preface saying like, okay, we're going to talk about delivery, assuming that consumption is a given. But of course, the most sustainable thing to do is not to buy anything, especially if you don't need it. But given that you did, then we can look at the best ways to incorporate that. But it's a good, as always, Jos, it's a good broader reflection to keep us thinking on. Linda, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, respond is a big word because it's a really loaded question. Yes, but there's two things. There's reduction in consumption, so not consuming is actually the best. But increasingly, people are reusing things, right? So if you look, and so there's a lot of logistics now that are consumer to consumer. And if you look at the sustainability of that, I think there's a lot of room for us to research that and also educate the consumer sending to the other consumers that maybe ordering a secondhand pair of shoes from Spain to have it delivered back to the Netherlands is not ideal either, right? That's a very interesting area of future research. Who's in?
I agree. I'm mindful of the time again. Sorry for being this guy, but I do want to give everyone room to move to their next meeting. So again, once more, thanks to the three speakers, Harry, Alinda, Sanne. It was very insightful. The presentations and the video recording will be shared on our website. So if things did go a bit quick, you can find it there and look at specific aspects a bit more. And you can always reach us for further debate, either online or at one of our next events, where I hope to see many of you again. So thanks for attending. Have a great day, and see you soon in the soon future. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Everyone, bye.